Well, I think this is going to come down to a question of leadership. I think as you choose the President of the United States, you're looking for a person who can lead this country in a very critical time, lead the free world, and the free world has to lead the entire world. I think it's about leadership, and the Speaker was given an opportunity to be the leader of our party in 1994, and at the end of 4 years, he had to resign in disgrace. Now, in the 1970s, he came to Washington. I went to work in my first job in the 1970s at the bottom level of a consulting firm. In the 1990s, he had to resign in disgrace from this job as Speaker. I had the opportunity to go off and run the Olympic Winter Games. In the 15 years after he left the speakership, the Speaker has been working as an influence peddler in Washington. And during those 15 years, I helped turn around the Olympics, helped begin a very successful turnaround in the state of Massachusetts. The Speaker, when I was fighting against cap and trade, the Speaker was sitting down with Nancy Pelosi on a sofa, encouraging it. When I was fighting to say that the Paul Ryan plan to save Medicare was bold and right, he was saying that it was right-wing social engineering. So we have very different perspectives on leadership and the kind of leadership that our conservative movement needs, not just to get elected, but to get the country right.
Mr. Speaker.
Well, look, I'm not going to spend the evening trying to chase Governor Romney's misinformation. We'll have a site at newt.org by tomorrow morning. We'll list everything. He just said at least 4 things that are false. I don't want to waste the time on them. I think the American public deserve a discussion about how to beat Barack Obama. The American public deserves a discussion about what we would do about the economy. And I just think this is the worst kind of trivial politics. I mean, he said at least 4 things were false. You know, we have an ad in which both John McCain and Mike Huckabee in 2007, 2008 explain how much they think Governor Romney can't tell the truth. I just suggest people look at them. Don't listen to me. Don't believe me. Just look at the ad with Mike Huckabee and Senator McCain, and you'll understand exactly what you just saw.
Governor Romney, we don't have to take my word for the facts. They're accurate. I'll point out that they're accurate. But the truth is that the members of his own team, his congressional team, after his 4 years of leadership, they moved to replace him. They also took a vote, and 88% of Republicans voted to reprimand the Speaker. And he did resign in disgrace after that. This was the first time in American history that a Speaker of the House has resigned from the House. And so that was the judgment rendered by his own people as to his leadership. Look, don't forget, at the end of the Speaker's term as Speaker, his approval rating was down to 18%. We suffered historic losses after his 4 years in office. The idea, and I'll make this other point, which is we just learned today that his contract with Freddie Mac was provided by the lobbyist at Freddie Mac. I don't think we can possibly retake the White House if the person who's leading our party is the person who was working for the chief lobbyist of Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac was paying Speaker Gingrich $1,600,000. At the same time, Freddie Mac was costing the people of Florida millions upon millions of dollars.
I realized last week, Governor, you said that you complained that too much of your time on stage lately has been spent on negativity vis-a-vis the other candidates. You pledged to spend your time going after the incumbent president, yet here we are again.
I'll tell you why, which is I learned something from that last contest in South Carolina, and that was I had incoming from all directions, was overwhelmed with a lot of the attacks, and I'm not going to sit back and get attacked day in and day out without returning fire. I would like not to have the kind of attacks that came against me. There were 2 ads run by Speaker Gingrich. Outside fact-checking groups said these ads were false, and yet they continued to run them. And one by his campaign, one by a PAC in his benefit, and I know he can't control that, but those ads were pretty heavy on me. So I'm going to point out things I think people need to know. It was Republicans who replaced him in the House, voted to reprimand him, and it was the head lobbyist of Freddie Mac with whom he had a contract at a time when Floridians were suffering as a result in part of Freddie Mac.
Mr. Speaker, 30 seconds before I move on.
Now, wait a second. I mean, he just went on and on and on, making a whole series of allegations. First of all, he may have been a good financier. He's a terrible historian. The fact is the vote on the Ethics Committee was in January of 1997. I asked the Republicans to vote yes because we had to get it behind us. The Democrats had filed 84 ethics charges for a simple reason. We had taken control of the House after 40 years, and they were very bitter. And the fact is, on every single ethics charge of substance that was dismissed in the end, the only thing we did wrong is we had one lawyer written one letter, and the one letter was in error. I didn't pay a fine. I paid the cost of going through the process of determining it was wrong. I left 2 years later, and frankly, we were right to get it behind us because the tax cut that led to economic growth, the 4 balanced budgets, all came after that vote. So you have all this stuff just jumbled up. Apparently your consultants aren't very good historians. What you ought to do is stop and look at the facts. And the fact is, we won the House for the 3rd time in 1998, but the margin wasn't big enough. So I am the only speaker up to that point since the 1920s who had led the Republican Party to 3 consecutive victories. By the way, in 2006, when you chaired the Governors Association, we lost governorships, and in the 4 years that you were governor, we lost seats in the Massachusetts legislature. So I think as a party builder, the 20 years I spent building the House Republican Party stands pretty good as an example of leadership.